Have you ever found yourself in a conversation with someone who speaks English really well, and everything is going fine? You understand what they are saying, you are nodding your head, you are smiling, and then, suddenly, they ask you a follow-up question so fast that you just freeze. You know that horrible feeling where your brain just goes completely blank? Your smile turns into a nervous stare, and you have to ask them to repeat it 3 times? It is incredibly frustrating, isn't it? You know the words, you have studied the grammar. But when people talk at a normal, natural speed, the questions just blend together into one long, fast sound. If this has happened to you, do not worry at all, because you are absolutely not alone. This is the #1 struggle for intermediate English learners, but today we are going to fix it together. Welcome to English in Fluency. My name is Alex, and I am so happy you are here right now. In today's deep practice session, we are going to focus entirely on understanding fast follow-up questions and keeping up with the natural flow of real English conversations. We are not going to read from a textbook today. We are going to listen to how real people actually talk, with all the fast sounds, the skipped words, and the quick reactions that make English sound so natural. By the end of this practice, your ears will be completely tuned in to the rhythm of natural English, and you will know exactly how to keep a conversation moving forward without panicking. So, grab your headphones, get comfortable, and let's jump right into it. To understand why follow-up questions are so hard to catch, we first need to talk about how native speakers actually use their mouths when they chat casually. When you learn English in a classroom, the teacher usually speaks very clearly, pausing between every single word. They might say something like, "What are you going to do this weekend?" But out in the real world, nobody talks like that. We connect our words together, we drop sounds, and we speak in a continuous stream. So that same question turns into something that sounds more like, "What you gonna do this weekend?" When someone answers that question, the listener does not just sit there silently. A natural conversation is like a game of tennis, with the ball going back and forth very quickly. If you say you are going to the beach, the other person will immediately hit the ball back with a fast follow-up question like, "Oh, nice, who are you going with?" Or, "Really, which beach?" The problem for your brain is that these follow-up questions are usually short. They are spoken at a higher speed than the main question, and they use a lot of reduced speech. Your brain is still processing the answer about the beach, and suddenly a new question is thrown at you. It feels overwhelming, but once you understand the secrets of how these questions are built, you will start catching them so easily. Let's look at exactly how this works with some examples, and I want you to just listen closely to the rhythm of my voice right now. Notice how I do not pause between my words. If I ask you, "Where did you buy that coat?" it sounds fast, right? But if I break it down, it is just 3 simple words connected together. Where did becomes where did, and did you becomes did ya. Where did ya buy that coat? Once your brain learns to hear did ya instead of did you, a whole new world of English will open up for you. We are going to practice this a lot today, so do not stress if it feels a bit fast right now. Your ears just need a little bit of training, and that is exactly what we are going to do. Let's imagine a real-life situation so we can practice this in context. I want you to picture 2 friends. Let's call them Leo and Mia. They are sitting in a coffee shop, catching up after a long time. Leo starts the conversation by asking Mia what she has been doing lately. Now, listen to how Mia answers, and then listen very carefully to the fast follow-up question Leo throws right back at her. Mia says, "I have been working a lot lately. We have a huge project at work." Leo immediately says, "Oh, wow. What kind of project? Did you hear how fast that was? Oh, wow. What kind of project?" He did not say, "Oh, wow. What kind of project is it?" He just said, "What kind of project?" Connecting kind of into kind of. What kind of project? This is a classic follow-up question. It shows he is listening, but it is spoken so quickly that many learners miss it entirely. Let's try another one from their conversation. Mia answers him and says, "It is a new marketing campaign for a shoe brand." Now, Leo could just say, "That is interesting," and let the conversation die. But a good conversationalist keeps the energy up by asking another fast question. He says, "Sounds cool. Are you enjoying it?" Sounds cool. Are you enjoying it? Are you enjoying becomes Araya enjoying. Sounds cool. Araya enjoying it. It takes less than 2 seconds to say, but if your brain is not ready for that speed, it just sounds like a mumble. But now that you know the secret, you know he is asking if she likes her work. You do not need to hear every single perfect letter to understand the meaning. Your brain is actually incredibly smart at filling in the blanks if you just relax and let the rhythm guide you. So, when you are listening to English, do not try to translate individual words. Try to catch the rhythm of the sentence. If you hear someone say something like, "How long you been doing that?" you might panic because "How long have you been doing that?" sounds completely different. But if you feel the rhythm, you know it is a question about time. How long ya? It is a beautiful, lazy way of speaking. And once you embrace it, listening becomes so much more fun. Now, I want us to look at another type of fast follow-up question that completely freezes learners, and that is the echo question. Sometimes, when someone says something surprising or interesting, we do not even use a full question. We just echo a part of their sentence with a rising voice. For example, imagine two other friends, Sam and Chloe. Sam says to Chloe, "I am moving to Canada next month." Chloe is shocked, so she does not say, "Oh, really? Why are you moving to Canada? That takes too long." Instead, she just says, "Next month?" with her voice going up at the end. Next month? Or she might say, "Canada? Moving to Canada?" These echo questions are the ultimate fast follow-ups because they barely use any words at all. But for a learner, hearing someone just say a word or two with a high pitch can be very confusing. Is she asking for confirmation? Is she confused? Is she angry? Usually, it just means she is surprised and wants you to tell her more. If Chloe says, "Next month," Sam knows exactly what she means. She means, "Wow, that is so soon. Tell me more about the timing." So Sam will naturally follow that up by saying, "Yeah, I know it is fast. I got a job offer in Vancouver." Then Chloe might say, "A job offer? Nice. Doing what?" Doing what is just a fast, reduced version of what are you going to be doing? Doing what? 2 words. The conversation keeps moving. When you listen to native speakers chat, you will hear these tiny echo questions all the time. People say things like, "On Friday? With who? Really? How come?" All of these are just fast follow-up questions designed to keep the flow going without slowing down to build a perfect grammatical sentence. If you can train yourself to recognize these little sounds, You will suddenly realize that people are not speaking as fast as you thought. They are just using fewer words. Let's do a little listening test right now to see how you are doing. I am going to play a short exchange between two people, and I want you to listen for the follow-up questions. Do not worry about understanding every single syllable. Just focus on the rhythm and the feeling of the conversation. Let's listen to Ethan and Nora. Ethan says, "I just finished reading that book you lent me." Nora says, "Oh yeah, what did you think?" Ethan says, "It was really good, but the ending was kind of sad." Nora says, "Right, I cried at the end." Ethan says, "Really? You cried?" Nora says, "Yeah, it was just so unexpected." Okay, let's break that down. Did you catch Nora's first follow-up question? "Oh yeah, what did you think?" In fast speech, what did you becomes what did ya? "Oh yeah, what did you think?" It flows like one long word. Then, when Ethan mentions the sad ending, Nora agrees and says she cried. Ethan's response is a perfect example of an echo follow-up. "Really? You cried?" He is not asking a formal question, he is just echoing her action to show surprise. This pushes Nora to explain why she cried, saying it was unexpected. Notice how in this entire exchange, nobody paused for more than a second. The questions fly back and forth, creating a natural, comfortable rhythm. When you practice listening, try to mimic this rhythm in your head. Tap your foot if it helps. English has a beat, and follow-up questions almost always fall right on the beat. They do not drag on. They are punchy and quick. What did you think? You cried? Doing what? Once you start feeling the beat of the language, your brain will stop treating fast speech like a puzzle and start treating it like music. I want to talk a little bit about why we use these fast follow-up questions so much in English, because understanding the culture behind the language helps your brain process it faster. In a lot of cultures, having a conversation means taking turns to give long, detailed speeches. You say your piece, I listen quietly, and then I say my piece. But in English-speaking cultures, especially in places like America, Britain, or Australia, a conversation is a collaborative activity. It is like building a house together. If I am talking and you just sit there silently, I will feel like you are bored or that you do not understand me. So, we use fast follow-up questions to show that we are engaged. We use them to say, I am here, I am listening, and I care about what you are saying. When someone tells me they went to a great restaurant, and I quickly say, "Oh, nice, what did you order?" I am not actually interrogating them. I am just giving them a little verbal hug to show I am interested. This is why the questions are so fast and so casual. If I stopped and said, "That is wonderful, please tell me, what food did you decide to order at this establishment?" it would sound completely ridiculous and robotic. It would kill the friendly vibe of the conversation. So, we speed up our words, we drop endings, and we use tiny questions to keep the friendly energy bouncing between us. When you realize that these fast questions are actually a sign of friendship and politeness, they become a lot less scary. They are not trying to trick you. They are just trying to connect with you. So the next time someone throws a quick "what you gonna do" or "how was it" at you, just smile and remember that they are just trying to be your friend. Now, let's talk about a specific kind of fast follow-up that causes a lot of trouble for listeners, and that is the clarification question. Sometimes in a conversation, you miss a detail. Maybe a car drove by, maybe someone dropped a glass, or maybe the speaker just mumbled. In a natural conversation, We do not say, "Excuse me, I did not hear you. Could you please repeat that entire sentence?" That is too formal and it breaks the flow completely. Instead, we use lightning-fast clarification questions. We just grab the last few words of what the person said and turn them into a question. For example, let's say my friend Daniel is telling me about his weekend. He says, "I went to visit my grandparents in the countryside on Saturday." If I miss the end of that sentence, I will not ask him to repeat everything. I will just say, "In the countryside?" with a confused tone. Daniel will immediately know that I heard the first part but missed the end, so he will just repeat the important part. "Yeah, we drove out to a little village near the mountains." Problem solved in 2 seconds. Let's listen to another example with two colleagues, Sarah and Mark. Sarah says, "I need to finish this report by Friday morning." Mark is distracted and says, "By Friday morning?" Sarah says, "Yeah, the boss wants it before the meeting." Notice how Mark's clarification question was incredibly fast and incredibly simple. He just echoed the time phrase. By Friday morning? He did not even use a question word. He just used a rising intonation. This is the secret weapon of natural listening. If you can learn to listen for rising intonation at the end of a sentence, you will instantly know when someone is asking a clarification follow-up. It does not matter if you do not know the exact words they are saying. If their voice goes up at the end, they are asking you something. They are handing the conversation back to you. When you are practicing your listening skills, try to focus 50% of your attention on the words and 50% on the music of the voice. Is the voice going up, going down, or staying flat? Going up usually means a question. Going down usually means a statement or an opinion. And staying flat usually means the person is thinking. If you master this musical aspect of English, you will understand fast follow-up questions even when the words are a complete blur. Let's put all of this together now with a longer, more detailed practice conversation. I want you to close your eyes if you can, or just focus softly on a spot on the wall, and do not try to analyze the grammar. Just let the English wash over you like a wave. Imagine two friends, Jake and Olivia, talking at a park. Jake says, "Hey Olivia, long time no see. How have you been?" Olivia says, "Hey Jake, I have been great. I just got back from a trip to Japan." Jake says, "No way. Japan? That is amazing. How long were you there?" Olivia says, "I went for 2 weeks. It was absolutely incredible." Jake says, 2 weeks. Wow, did you go to Tokyo? Olivia says, "I did. I spent 5 days there, and then I took a train to Kyoto." Jake says, "Oh, nice. What was Kyoto like?" Olivia says, "It was so beautiful, very peaceful compared to Tokyo, lots of old temples." Jake says, "Sounds perfect. Did you try the sushi?" Olivia says, "Oh my goodness, I ate sushi every single day. It was the best I have ever had." Jake says, "I am so jealous. Where did you stay in Tokyo?" Olivia says, "I found a really cheap little hotel in a quiet neighborhood. It was tiny, but very clean." Jake says, "That is awesome. Are you planning to go back anytime soon?" Okay, you can open your eyes now. Let's talk about what you just heard. Did you notice how Jake kept the conversation alive? He never let a silence grow. Every time Olivia finished a sentence, Jake was right there with a fast follow-up. He started with an echo question, "No way, Japan?" Then he asked about the time, "How long were you there?" When she said 2 weeks, he echoed it and asked a specific question, 2 weeks. Wow, did you go to Tokyo? Did you becomes did ya? Did ya go to Tokyo? Then he asked what Kyoto was like. What was becomes what's was. What's was Kyoto like? Then he asked about the food. Did you try the sushi? Did you try the sushi? And finally, he asked about her accommodation. Where did you stay? Where did you stay? Every single one of his follow-up questions used reduced speech, and every single one was spoken at a very natural, conversational speed. If you understood most of that, you should be incredibly proud of yourself, because that is exactly the speed of a real native conversation. If you missed a few things, that is totally okay. Let's go back and look at those specific fast sounds one more time, so your brain can really lock them in. Let's break down the phrase, "Where did you stay?" Because this is a pattern you will hear hundreds of times in English. Any question that starts with "Where did you?" is going to sound exactly the same. "Where did you go?" becomes "Where did you go?" "Where did you buy that?" becomes "Where did you buy that?" "Where did you find this?" becomes "Where did you find this?" The "did you" completely loses its clear pronunciation and turns into a soft J sound. Where did you? It is almost like a single word. When you are listening to someone speak, if you hear a word that starts with where and ends with a J sound, you immediately know they are asking about a place in the past. You do not need to mentally spell out WHEREDIDYOU. That is too slow. You just need to recognize the sound. Where did you? And your brain will instantly translate it to a place question. Let's try the same thing with what did you? What did you say becomes what did you say? What did you eat becomes what did you eat? What did you do last night becomes what did you do last night? The rhythm is exactly the same. The D sound from did jumps right onto the J sound from you. What did you? If you practice saying this out loud right now, what did you, you will feel how easy it is to say. It requires much less effort than saying, what did you? And because it is easy to say, people say it very fast. When you are watching a movie or listening to a podcast, and you hear that J sound after a question word, just assume it is, did you? 9 times out of 10, you will be exactly right. This is how you hack the listening process. You stop trying to hear letters, and you start listening for sound clusters. Where did ya? What did ya? How did ya? Why did ya? Once your ears tune into these clusters, the fast follow-up questions will stop sounding like a foreign language and start sounding like the comfortable, casual English that you want to master. Now, I want to shift our focus slightly and talk about how you can respond to these fast follow-up questions without breaking the conversation flow. Because understanding the question is only half the battle, right? You also need to be able to answer it smoothly. A big mistake that learners make is taking too long to answer. When someone asks a fast follow-up, they are expecting a fast answer. If you pause for 5 seconds to translate in your head, the energetic flow of the conversation dies. So, how do you buy yourself a little bit of time to think without making it awkward? You use conversation fillers. These are little words or sounds that do not really mean anything, but they tell the other person, I heard you. I am thinking, give me 1 second. In English, the most common fillers are words like, well, let me think, and actually. Let's look at how this works in a conversation. Imagine someone asks you, so, what did you think of the movie? That fast what did you think question. If you need a second to remember the movie, you do not just stay silent. You say, well, let me think. I thought it was pretty good, but a bit long. By saying, well, let me think, you have filled the silence perfectly. The other person does not feel awkward because you are still making noise. You are still participating in the rhythm. Another great filler is the word actually. Actually is a magic word in English because you can use it to start almost any answer. Someone asks, "Are you going to the party tonight?" You can say, "Actually, I am not sure yet. I might be too tired." The word actually gives your brain an extra half a second to formulate the rest of the sentence. The key to using fillers is to use them confidently. Do not say and then look down at the floor. Say well with a smile, keep eye contact, and then give your answer. It makes you sound incredibly fluent, even if your grammar is not perfect. People do not care about perfect grammar in casual conversations. They care about the connection. They care about the flow. So use well, use actually, use let me see, and keep that conversational ball rolling right over the net. Let's do another listening practice, but this time I want you to focus on the fillers and the reactions just as much as the fast questions. I want you to notice how the speakers keep the energy high even when they are thinking. Listen to this conversation between two friends, Ben and Lily, who are talking about their hobbies. Ben says, "I have started learning to play the guitar recently." Lily says, "Oh, really? That is cool. How is it going?" Ben says, "Well, it is definitely harder than I expected. My fingers hurt so much." Lily says, "Haha, yeah, I heard that happens. Are you taking lessons?" Ben says, "Actually, I am just watching videos online. It is cheaper that way." Lily says, "Oh, nice. What kind of music are you trying to play?" Ben says, "Let me see. Mostly rock music, but some blues too." Lily says, "Rock music? Awesome! Can you play a full song yet?" Ben says, "Not quite. I can play a few chords, but putting it all together is really tough." Lily says, "I bet, but keep at it. You will get there." Did you hear how beautifully Ben used those fillers? When Lily asked how it was going, he started with, "Well." When she asked if he was taking lessons, he started with "actually." When she asked what kind of music, he used "let me see." These three little phrases made his answers sound so smooth and natural. He never broke the rhythm. And did you notice Lily's fast follow-up questions? She did not ask long, complicated questions. How is it going? Are you taking lessons? What kind of music are you trying to play? Can you play a full song yet? Every single one of her questions was short, punchy, and reduced. Are you taking lessons? Sounds like Araya taking lessons. What kind of music sounds like what kind of music? This is the gold standard of listening practice. If you can understand this type of exchange, you are ready to go out and have real conversations with native speakers. You will still make mistakes. You will still miss a word here and there, but the flow will not break. You will understand the intentions behind the words, and that is the true definition of fluency. I want to take a moment to talk about a very specific, very sneaky, fast follow-up question that you will hear all the time, especially in friendly, argumentative, or teasing conversations. It is the question tag, and it is used to ask for agreement or to confirm something you already think is true. In a textbook, they teach you tags like, "You are coming to the party, aren't you?" But in real life, we shorten these so much that they are barely there. We just attach a little sound to the end of a sentence. For example, instead of saying, "It is a beautiful day, isn't it?" a native speaker will say, "It's a beautiful day, isn't it?" "In it" is a reduction of "isn't it." It is extremely common in informal British and Australian English, and you are starting to hear it a lot in American English too. Another example, instead of saying we are leaving now, right? Someone will just say, we're leaving now, right? But the right will be swallowed. We're leaving now, Rai. It blends right into the word now. Let's listen to how this sounds in a conversation between two roommates, Tyler and Grace. Tyler says, "It is freezing in here." Grace says, "Yeah, the heater is broken again, innit?" Tyler says, "I think so. I called the landlord about it this morning." Grace says, "Oh, nice. Is he gonna send someone to fix it?" Tyler says, "He said he would try to come by tomorrow." Grace says, "Tomorrow? That's a long time to be cold, right? Did you catch those sneaky little tags?" "Innit?" "Right. They are so small and so fast that if you blink, you will miss them. But they are doing a very important job. They are turning statements into questions to keep the other person engaged." If Grace just said, "Yeah, the heater is broken again," it would sound like she is ending the conversation. But by adding in it, she is throwing the conversational ball right back to Tyler. When you are listening to English, keep your ears open for these tiny sounds at the end of sentences. In it. Right. You know, they are little flags that tell you the other person wants you to respond. If you hear in it, you can just say, "Yeah, exactly." If you hear right, you can say, "Totally." You do not need to give a long answer. The fast follow-up is just asking for a quick reaction to keep the rhythm alive. Let's talk about another reaction that acts like a fast follow-up, and that is the negative question. Sometimes, when someone tells us something, we want to express surprise by asking a question in the negative. For example, your friend says, "I just quit my job." You might say, "You didn't," with a rising voice. "You didn't." Or they say, "I ate the entire pizza." You say, "No, you didn't." No, you didn't. These are incredibly fast, incredibly common responses, but they can be very confusing for learners because they sound like a negative statement. But the rising voice means they are actually asking for confirmation. "No, you didn't" really means, "Oh my goodness, did you really do that?" Let's listen to how this plays out between two friends, Chris and Emma. Chris says, "I booked flights to Italy for next week." Emma says, "No, you didn't. That is so spontaneous." Chris says, "I know, I just felt like I needed a break." Emma says, "Wow, are you going alone?" Chris says, "Well, I asked my brother, but he has to work." Emma says, "Ah, that is a shame, but it will be fun by yourself, right?" Chris says, "I hope so. I have never traveled alone before." Emma says, "Seriously, you have never traveled alone?" Chris says, "No, always with family or friends." Emma says, "Well, this is going to be a great experience for you." Listen to Emma's reactions. "No, you didn't." "Seriously, you have never traveled alone?" These are negative questions used as fast follow-ups. They show high emotion, high surprise, and they push Chris to explain himself further. If you are listening to someone and they say something negative with a high-pitched voice, like "no way," or "you didn't," or "is that not crazy," they are not disagreeing with you. They are just showing excitement or shock. It is a sign of a very healthy, energetic conversation. When you speak English, try using these yourself. When your friend tells you some crazy news, just say, "No way," or "shut up," which does not mean "be quiet," it just means "I am so surprised." It will make your English sound so incredibly natural and alive. I want to share a little secret with you right now that most English teachers do not tell you. When you are listening to a fast conversation, it is completely okay to fake it sometimes. What I mean by that is, If someone asks you a fast follow-up question and you only caught half of it, you do not always have to admit that you did not understand. Sometimes you can just make a safe guess based on the context and answer the question you think they asked. For example, imagine you are talking to someone about food. You say, "I love cooking Italian food." They fire back a fast question that sounds like, "What did you make last night?" But it was so fast that it just sounded like white noise. You have two choices here. Choice number one is to break the flow. Look confused and say, "Sorry, what did you say?" That is fine and sometimes necessary. But choice number two is to guess. You know you were just talking about cooking. You know they probably asked about something you cooked. So you can just smile and say, "Oh, I made a really nice pasta with a garlic sauce." 9 times out of 10, you will have guessed correctly, and the conversation will flow perfectly. The other person will never know that you missed the exact words. Of course, if you guess wrong, they will just repeat themselves. But learning to rely on context clues is a massive part of developing your listening fluency. Native speakers do this all the time. We zone out for a second, we miss a question, and we just answer based on what we think the person said. It keeps the conversation smooth and comfortable. So, do not put too much pressure on your ears. Trust your brain to fill in the missing pieces. If the topic is travel, expect questions about places and times. If the topic is work, expect questions about bosses and projects. If you relax and let the context guide you, those fast follow-up questions will feel a lot less intimidating. Let's do one more big listening practice to bring all of these concepts together. This is going to be a slightly longer conversation, and I want you to imagine you are sitting at a table with these two people. I want you to try to catch the fast follow-ups, the reduced speech, the echo questions, and the fillers. If you miss something, do not rewind. Just keep listening and use the context to figure out what is happening. Here are two friends, Ryan and Sophie, talking about a recent life event. Ryan says, "Hey Sophie, I have not seen you in ages. How have things been?" Sophie says, "Hey Ryan, things have been a bit crazy actually. I just moved to a new apartment." Ryan says, "No way. Where did you move to?" Sophie says, "I found a place downtown, near the river." Ryan says, "Oh, nice. Is it bigger than your old place?" Sophie says, "Well, it is actually smaller, but the balcony is huge, and it has an amazing view." Ryan says, "A view of the river. That sounds expensive." Sophie says, "Let me tell you, it is. But I got a new job that pays a bit more, so I can afford it." Ryan says, "Congratulations. What kind of job?" Sophie says, "I am working for a tech startup now, doing social media marketing." Ryan says, "That sounds really interesting. Are you working from home?" Sophie says, "I am hybrid, so I go to the office 3 days a week." Ryan says, "Right on. Do you like the people you work with?" Sophie says, "Yeah, they are really young and energetic. It is a totally different vibe from my last job." Ryan says, "I bet. Well, I am happy for you. We should celebrate. Are you free this weekend?" Sophie says, "I am totally free. Let's definitely grab dinner or something." Okay, let's pause right there. How did that feel? Did you notice how the conversation just flowed like a river? There were no awkward pauses, no formal grammar checks, just two people genuinely connecting. Let's look at Ryan's fast follow-up questions. Where did you move to became where did ya move to? Is it bigger than your old place became is it bigger than your old place, which is relatively slow. But notice how he connected "than your" into "than your." Is it bigger than your old place? Then he asked, "What kind of job?" which became "what kind of job?" Are you working from home? Became "Araya," working from home. Do you like the people you work with? Became "dia," like the people ya work with. Are you free this weekend? Became "Araya," free this weekend. Every single question was reduced, fast, and casual. And look at Sophie's answers. She used fillers like "actually," "well," and "let me tell you" to keep her sentences flowing smoothly. She answered the questions directly. She did not overthink her grammar. She just spoke. This is the goal. This is what listening and speaking looks like when it is done right. It is not about being perfect. It is about being connected. I want to talk about a completely different challenge now, and that is when conversations suddenly shift direction. Have you ever been talking to someone, feeling really confident, and then they completely change the subject without warning? 1 second you are talking about your weekend, and the next second they ask a question about your job or your family, and you are left standing there with your mouth open, trying to figure out how you got there. It is a very common experience, but native speakers actually do give you tiny warning signs before they change the subject. They use little bridge phrases. These are short, fast sentences that act like a bridge from one topic to the next. If you can train your ears to hear these bridge phrases, you will never be caught off guard by a topic change again. Let's look at how this works in a real conversation. Imagine two friends, Lucas and Hannah. They are talking about a movie they just saw. Lucas says, "The action scenes were amazing, but the story was a bit weak." Hannah says, "Yeah, I totally agree with you on that." Speaking of stories, did you see the news article about the space telescope today? Do you hear what Hannah just did? She used the bridge phrase, "speaking of stories." "Speaking of" is one of the most common ways to pivot in English. It connects the current topic to a completely new topic. Because she said "speaking of stories," Lucas's brain is already prepared to hear something related to a story. So when she asks about the news article, it does not feel like a shock. Other bridge phrases you will hear all the time include things like, "which reminds me," or "by the way," or "that is kind of like what happened to me." These phrases are spoken very quickly, almost as an afterthought, but they are your golden ticket to following the conversation. When you hear "by the way," your brain should immediately light up and say, "Okay, new topic coming, get ready." If you practice listening for these bridges, instead of just trying to understand every single word, you will naturally stay on track with the flow of the conversation, no matter how fast the people are talking. Another incredibly sneaky way that native speakers ask fast follow-up questions is by tacking a tiny phrase onto the end of a statement. We talked a little bit about question tags earlier, but I want to go deeper into something called the soft tail. This is when a speaker makes a normal statement, but then adds 2 or 3 words at the very end to turn it into a casual question. The most famous soft tail in the English language is the phrase or something. People put or something at the end of their sentences constantly. For example, someone might say, "I think I am going to have a sandwich for lunch," or something. Now, grammatically, that is not really a question. But in real life, when someone says or something at the end of a sentence, their voice goes up a little bit, and they are actually asking for your input. They are saying, "I am going to have a sandwich," But what do you think? Or do you have a better idea? If you do not realize that, or something is a soft tail, you might just think the person is being weirdly vague. But if you understand the hidden meaning, you can jump right in with a fast follow-up of your own. You could say, "A sandwich sounds good," or "We could order pizza." Let's listen to how this sounds between two colleagues, Noah and Isla, who are planning a work event. Noah says, "We should probably get some decorations for the party or something." Isla says, "Yeah, maybe some balloons and a banner." Noah says, "Sounds good, and maybe we can order some food from that Italian place downtown," or whatever. Isla says, "Oh, I love that place. What do you think we should order? Did you catch those soft tails?" Or something, or whatever. Noah is not being lazy with his vocabulary. He is actually using these phrases to keep the conversation open. He is inviting Isla to contribute her ideas without demanding a formal answer. When you are listening to English, pay close attention to the ends of sentences. If you hear or something, or whatever, or something like that, the other person is handing the microphone to you. They want you to take the conversation and run with it. It is a very polite, very friendly way to keep the flow moving without sounding like a bossy person who is giving orders. If you can hear these soft tails, you will understand so much more about the true intention behind what people are saying. Now I want us to tackle a specific type of follow-up question that usually makes learners freeze because it feels a little bit aggressive, even though it really is not. I am talking about the why question, and its much friendlier cousin, how come? In a textbook, you learn that if you want to know the reason for something, you ask why. Why did you move? Why are you tired? But in casual, fast English, the word why can sometimes sound a little sharp or direct. So, native speakers use how come instead, probably 90% of the time. How come is a magical phrase because it does not change its form. You do not have to add did or does to it. It just stays exactly the same. How come you moved? How come you are tired? It sounds softer. It sounds more curious, and it sounds incredibly natural. But here is the problem for your ears. When people say, "How come fast?" it blends together into "how come." It loses the clear E sound at the end. How come you moved? How come you are tired? It sounds like one single fast word. Let's listen to a conversation between two friends, Owen and Amelia, to see how this works in real time. Owen says, "I am not going to the gym today. I am just too exhausted." Amelia says, "How come? Did you stay up late again?" Owen says, "Yeah, I was playing this new video game until 3 in the morning." Amelia says, "Oh man, how come you do that to yourself? You know you have to work in the morning. Did you hear how fast those were? How come? How come you do that?" It flows so smoothly that it barely takes any time to say. If Amelia had used why, it would sound like an interrogation. Why did you stay up late? Why do you do that to yourself? It sounds like she is angry. But how come just sounds like friendly curiosity. When you are listening to people chat, if you hear a sound that starts with how and ends with a soft M sound, followed immediately by a subject like you or he or she, your brain should instantly recognize it as a friendly why question. How come he quit his job? How come they are moving? How come she is mad? Once your ears lock onto the sound, how come, you will start hearing it everywhere, in movies, in podcasts, in coffee shops. It is one of the most common secret weapons of natural English. And now it is in your toolkit. Let's take a break from the questions for a minute and talk about something that is equally important for keeping up with a conversation flow, and that is fast reactions. A conversation is not just a list of questions and answers. It is a shared emotional experience. If someone tells you something exciting, and you just answer their question with a flat, boring voice, the conversation will die. You have to react. But reactions in English are often just as fast and just as confusing as follow-up questions. Native speakers use short, idiomatic phrases to show emotion. And if you do not know these phrases, you might think people are talking about literal things when they are actually just showing sympathy or excitement. For example, let's say your friend tells you they have to work on Saturday. A textbook might teach you to say, "I am sorry to hear that." But a native speaker will say, "Oh, that sucks," or "Bummer," or "That is a shame." If your friend tells you they finally passed a really hard test, a native speaker will not say, "Congratulations on your achievement." They will say, "No way, good for you," or "That is awesome," or "You nailed it." These phrases are incredibly short, and they are spoken with a lot of emotion. They are not meant to be analyzed grammatically. They are just meant to show the other person that you are feeling the emotion with them. Let's listen to two friends, Liam and Zoe, sharing some news. Liam says, "I finally finished paying off my car loan today." Zoe says, "Oh my gosh, that is huge. You must be so relieved." Liam says, "I really am. It feels like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders." Zoe says, "Tell me about it. I am still paying mine for another 2 years." Listen to Zoe's reactions. "That is huge. Tell me about it." If you are a learner, the phrase "tell me about it" might confuse you. You might think she is literally asking him to tell her about the weight on his shoulders. But "tell me about it" is actually an idiom that means "I completely understand, because I am going through the exact same thing." It is a way of showing deep sympathy. When you listen to English, you have to listen for emotion, not just for vocabulary. If someone's voice goes high and they say, "Oh wow," or "No way," they are excited. If their voice goes low and they say, "Oh man," or "Bummer," they are sympathetic. If you can match your reactions to their emotions, you will sound so fluent, even if you do not know the exact right words to say. A simple, "Oh no," or "That is great," said with genuine feeling, is worth 100 perfectly grammatical sentences. Now, let's put reactions and fast follow-up questions together in a longer practice conversation. I want you to close your eyes again and just feel the energy bouncing between these two people. Do not worry about translating anything. Just let the rhythm wash over you. Here are two friends, Mason and Harper. Mason says, "You will not believe what happened to me this morning." Harper says, "What? Did you get into a car accident or something?" Mason says, No, nothing like that. I was running late for work, so I decided to take the subway." Harper says, "Yeah, and?" Mason says, "And I sat down, looked up, and the guy standing right in front of me was my favorite actor from that new superhero show." Harper says, "No way, shut up. Are you serious?" Mason says, "I swear, it was really him. He was just wearing a hat and sunglasses." Harper says, "That is insane. Did you talk to him?" Mason says, "Well, I was too nervous at first, but then he dropped his phone, so I picked it up for him." Harper says, "Oh my goodness, what did he say?" Mason says, "He just said, 'Thanks, mate. Have a good day.' But his voice is so deep in real life." Harper says, "I am so jealous. How come you always run into famous people and I never do?" "Okay, Open your eyes. Let's break down the absolute fireworks show of natural English that just happened. Did you hear Harper's very first fast follow-up? What? Did you get into a car accident or something? She used an or something soft tail to make a wild guess. Then, when Mason said he took the subway, she just said, "Yeah, and?" The word, and with a rising voice, is a brilliant fast follow-up. It literally means, "Please continue your story. I am on the edge of my seat." Then, when he revealed it was an actor, her reactions were pure emotion. "No way! Shut up! Are you serious?" She was not actually telling him to be quiet. "Shut up" just means I am so shocked right now. Then she hit him with the classic, "Did you talk to him? Did ya talk to him?" And finally, at the very end, she used the how come phrase. How come you always run into famous people? If you understood that entire conversation, you are operating at a very high level of English listening. The speed was intense, the vocabulary was casual, and the emotions were high. But because you now know the secrets of connected speech, soft tales, and idiomatic reactions, it should have felt much clearer than it would have before. I want to focus on one more tiny detail that makes a massive difference in your listening fluency, and that is the unstressed words in a sentence. English is a stress-timed language. This means that the important words, like nouns, verbs, and adjectives, get a lot of power and time when we speak. But the little grammar words, like prepositions, articles, and pronouns, get squished down until they are almost invisible. When you are listening to a fast follow-up question, your brain needs to learn to ignore the tiny words and focus only on the big, stressed words. Let me give you an example. Imagine someone asks you, "What are you going to do about the problem?" In fast speech, that sounds like, "What you gonna do about the problem?" The words what, do, and problem get the stress. What you gonna do about the problem? The words gonna, about, and the are just whispered. They are flat. They have no musical note to them. If you try to listen to every single syllable in that sentence, your brain will get tired in about 5 minutes. But if you train yourself to only hear the stressed words, you get what, do, problem. And from those 3 words, your brain can instantly build the meaning of the question. Let's try another one. Where are you going after the movie? Where are you going becomes where you going. Where you going after the movie? The stressed words are where, going, and movie. Where you going after the movie? If you just hear where, going, movie, you know it is a question about a destination after a film. You do not need to consciously hear the tiny sounds. This is a huge mindset shift for language learners. Most learners think that good listening means hearing 100% of the sounds. That is a myth. Good listening means hearing 30% of the sounds and letting your amazing brain do the rest of the work. When you listen to a fast follow-up question, lean back, relax your ears, and just wait for the stressed words to pop out at you. They always will, because native speakers cannot speak without stressing the important words. It is physically impossible. So let the small words fade into the background, catch the big words, and let your brain solve the puzzle automatically. Let's do one more listening exercise to prove to you how powerful this stress timing strategy is. I am going to play a conversation, but this time I want you to actively ignore the small words. Just let them wash past you and grab onto the nouns, verbs, and adjectives. Here are 2 colleagues, Felix and Gemma, talking about their weekend plans. Felix says, "I am thinking about going hiking tomorrow morning." Gemma says, "Oh, really? Where are you planning to go?" Felix says, "I might drive up to that mountain we talked about last week." Gemma says, "Sounds fun. Are you going to bring your dog?" Felix says, "I want to, but I heard the trail is pretty steep, and I do not want him to get too tired." Gemma says, "That makes sense. How long is the drive?" Felix says, "It takes about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours with traffic." Gemma says, "Well, have a great time. Take some pictures." Now, let's look at the stressed words in Gemma's fast follow-up questions. First, she asked, "Where are you planning to go?" The stressed words are where, planning, go. Where, planning, go. That is all you needed to hear to know she was asking for a location. Next, she asked, "Are you going to bring your dog?" Stressed words are going, bring, dog. Going, bring, dog. You instantly know she is asking about the animal. Then, she asked, "How long is the drive?" Stressed words are long, drive, long drive. Even if you missed the word how, hearing long and drive tells you she is asking about time or distance. Do you see how much easier this makes listening? When you stop chasing the tiny grammar words and start hunting for the big stressed words, English suddenly slows down. It feels manageable. It feels like something you can actually conquer. I really want you to practice this stress hunting technique this week. Put on a podcast or a video, turn off the subtitles, and just try to catch the stressed words in every question you hear. You will be amazed at how much meaning you can extract from just a few heavily stressed syllables. We have covered so much ground, but there is one situation that we have not talked about yet, and it is the situation that causes more learners to completely give up and stop talking than anything else. I am talking about group conversations. Have you ever been at a dinner table or a party with 3 or 4 native speakers, and the conversation is just flying back and forth so fast that you feel like you are watching a tennis match from the nosebleed seats? It is exhausting, isn't it? In a one-on-one conversation, you only have to track one person's fast follow-up questions. But in a group, the questions are coming from all directions. People are talking over each other. They are interrupting. They are finishing each other's sentences. And the follow-up questions are bouncing around the table like a pinball. Your brain just gets completely overloaded. And by the time you formulate an answer to one question, the group has already moved on to 3 completely different topics. It is a horrible feeling, but I want you to know that even native speakers get lost in group conversations sometimes. You do not have to understand everything. The secret to surviving a group conversation is to stop trying to understand every word and start looking for your opening. Let me explain what I mean by that. In a group, you do not need to answer every follow-up question that is asked. Sometimes, a question is directed at the whole table, and anyone can answer. Other times, a question is directed at a specific person. If someone looks directly at you and says, "Hey, what do you think about that?" obviously, you need to answer. But if 2 other people are chatting rapidly back and forth, and one asks a fast follow-up like, "How long did that take?" you can just sit back, listen to the rhythm, and let them answer it. You do not have to compete. Your only job in a group conversation is to catch the general topic, wait for a natural pause, and then drop in a comment or a follow-up question of your own. Let's imagine a group conversation so you can see how this works in your mind. Picture 3 friends, Theo, Maya, and Liam, sitting around a table having drinks. Theo says, "I finally finished remodeling my kitchen last week. Maya immediately fires back a fast follow-up. Oh, nice. How long did it take? Theo says, way longer than I thought. Almost 4 months. Liam jumps in with another fast follow-up. 4 months? Was it super expensive? Theo says, yeah, the materials cost a fortune, but I did a lot of the painting myself to save money. Maya says, wait, you painted it yourself. What color did you use? Notice how Maya and Liam did not wait their turn in a polite, orderly line. They just jumped right in with their fast follow-up questions as soon as Theo finished his sentence. How long did it take? Was it super expensive? What color did you use? If you are Theo, you are just answering them one by one. But if you are a fourth person sitting at that table, let's call you the silent listener, you might feel a crazy amount of pressure to say something brilliant. But you don't have to. You can just nod, smile, and listen to the rhythm. When there is finally a tiny pause, you can use a soft tail or an echo question to gently get back into the mix. You could just say, 4 months. Wow. Or, I bet it looks great. You do not need to ask a complicated grammar question. In a group, simple reactions are powerful. They show you are part of the team. So the next time you are in a group and the speed picks up, take a deep breath. Stop trying to catch every single reduced word. Just track the main topic. Track who is asking questions to whom, and wait for your moment. The flow of a group conversation is like a river, and you do not have to swim against the current. You just have to float along with it until you find a calm spot to rest. Now, I want to talk about something really fascinating that happens when a conversation moves from casual small talk into something a little bit deeper. As an English learner, you probably spend a lot of time practicing small talk questions. How are you? Where are you from? What do you do? These are fine, but they get boring very quickly. Native speakers hate staying in small talk mode for too long. We are always looking for an excuse to jump into a more interesting topic, and we use a specific type of fast follow-up question to make that jump. I call these deep dive questions. They usually start with phrases like, what is it actually like? Or, do you ever miss? Or, what made you decide? These questions are magical because they signal to the other person that you are truly interested in them, not just making polite noises. But because these phrases are spoken so fast, they can sound like a complete blur to a listener. Let's look at the phrase, what is it actually like? In slow speech, that is 7 words. But in a real conversation, it becomes, what's it actually like? What's it actually like? It flows together into one long sound. If someone tells you they moved to a new country, and you ask what's it actually like living there, you have just opened the door to a beautiful, deep conversation. Let's listen to how this sounds between two people who just met at a party, Julian and Violet. Julian says, I used to be a high school teacher, but I quit last year to become a full-time musician. Violet says, no way. That is a huge change. What made you decide to do that? Did you catch that? What made you decide becomes what Medea decide. What Medea decide to do that? Julian says, well, I was just so unhappy waking up early every day, and music is my true passion. Violet says, I totally get that, but what's it actually like trying to make a living from music? Is it scary? Listen to how naturally Violet moved the conversation from a simple fact to a deep emotional topic. She asked what Medea decide, and then she asked what's it actually like. Both of those questions were fast, both used reduced speech, but together they created an incredible connection. When you learn to recognize these deep dive triggers, you will stop having boring, surface-level conversations and start having real, meaningful chats with people. You will understand when someone is inviting you to share your real feelings, and that is when English stops being a school subject and starts being a bridge to human connection. There is one more very subtle, very quiet type of fast follow-up question that I need to teach you before we finish today. It is the fading question. Sometimes people want to ask you a follow-up question, but they feel like it might be too personal, or they are a little bit shy. So they say the question, but their voice fades away at the very end. They drop the volume of their voice so much that you can barely hear the last two words. This happens all the time with questions about money, relationships, or health. Imagine your friend Oliver knows you recently broke up with your partner. He wants to ask if you are okay, but he does not want to upset you. So he might say, "Hey, are you doing okay lately?" with his voice getting quieter and quieter on the word lately. Or imagine your colleague Hazel knows you had a job interview. She might say, "So, did they offer you the job?" But the words "the job" are almost whispered. When you are listening to English, you really have to pay attention to the volume of the voice, not just the speed. If someone asks a question and their voice fades out, it is a special signal. They are telling you that they care about you, but they are giving you an easy way out. If you do not want to answer, you can just pretend you did not hear them because they spoke so quietly. You can just change the subject. It is a very polite, very British, or very Canadian way of asking sensitive questions. But if you want to answer, you can just match their quiet energy and say, "Yeah, I am doing much better now. Thanks for asking." When you are watching movies or listening to podcasts, see if you can spot these fading questions. They are incredibly subtle. But once you notice them, you will realize that native speakers are communicating just as much with their volume as they are with their words. It is a beautiful, quiet part of the language that most textbooks completely ignore. But now you know the secret. Let's do one final detailed practice conversation to wrap up everything we have learned together. I want you to listen to this as if your life depends on it, but also with a completely relaxed body. I want you to listen for the reduced speech, the stressed words, the fillers, the soft tails, the deep dive questions, and the reactions. Do not analyze it word by word. Just let the story wash over you and see how much of the meaning you can grab just by feeling the rhythm and the emotion. Here are two good friends, Caleb and Sophia, having a deep chat on a park bench. Caleb says, "I have been having a really hard time sleeping lately." Sophia says, "Oh no, how come? Are you stressed about work?" Caleb says, "Well, sort of. But it is more about my living situation. My neighbors are so loud." Sophia says, "That is the worst. What kind of noise are they making?" Caleb says, "They play heavy metal music at 2 in the morning. It is unbelievable." Sophia says, "Seriously, have you tried talking to them about it?" Caleb says, "I did. I knocked on their door last week, but they just pretended they were not home." Sophia says, "What a nightmare. What's it actually like trying to sleep through that?" Caleb says, "Let me tell you, it is impossible. I have been surviving on coffee, and I feel like a zombie." Sophia says, "I bet. You look exhausted. Are you thinking about moving out?" Caleb says, "Actually, I am. I started looking at new apartments online yesterday." Sophia says, Good idea. Do you have to pay a fee to break your lease? Caleb says, Yeah, but at this point, I do not care. I just need a quiet room. Okay, take a deep breath. How was that? If you understood the story of the loud neighbors and the sleeping problems, you have absolutely nailed this lesson. Look at all the tools Sophia used. She asked how calm to find out the reason. She asked what kind of noise using connected speech. She asked, have you tried talking to them? Which became, have you tried talking to them? She used the deep dive question, what's it actually like? She used the filler, let me tell you, when he answered. And she asked, are you thinking about moving out? Which became, Araya thinking about moving out. It was a masterclass in natural English flow. Caleb used filler words like, well, sort of, and actually to keep his side of the conversation smooth. Every single sentence was connected to the next one, with zero awkward silences. If you can listen to an exchange like that and feel the emotion and the meaning, you are no longer a beginner. You are stepping into a higher level of English, and you should be incredibly proud of the work you have put in today. As we come to the very end of our time together, I want to leave you with a final thought about the journey of learning English. Learning to understand fast follow-up questions is not just a grammar exercise. It is an exercise in empathy. When you learn to hear the soft tails, the fading questions, and the stressed words, you are actually learning to hear the human being behind the voice. You are learning to hear when someone is excited, when they are nervous, when they are being polite, and when they are genuinely curious about your life. Language is not a math equation that has to be perfectly balanced. It is a messy, beautiful, imperfect tool that we use to try and share our inner world with other people. When you are talking to someone in English and they fire a fast follow-up question at you, they are not testing your grammar. They are reaching out to you. They are trying to connect. And when you use a filler like, well, or when you ask a deep dive question like what it actually like, you are reaching right back. Do not let the fear of making a mistake stop you from reaching out. The mistakes do not matter. I have heard native speakers make terrible grammatical mistakes, and nobody cares. What people care about is the energy. What people care about is the flow. You have all the tools now. You know the secrets of connected speech. You know how to hunt for the stressed words, and you know how to keep the rhythm going. All you have to do is trust yourself. The next time you are in a conversation and someone asks you a fast question, do not panic. Take a breath, say, well, let me think, and just answer with whatever words come out of your mouth. I promise you, it will be okay. Thank you so much for joining me for this massive deep practice session on English in Fluency. I am Alex, and making these lessons for you is truly my passion. If your listening has improved even a little bit today, please take 1 second to hit that subscribe button and leave a comment down below telling me your biggest takeaway from this video. Your comments help me know exactly what you need to learn next. If you want to keep practicing with me, check out the other listening videos on my channel where we break down real, unscripted English conversations just like we did today. Share this video with a friend who is struggling with their English listening, because sometimes all it takes is hearing the right explanation to make everything click. Keep practicing those shadowing techniques, keep hunting for stressed words, and keep smiling when you make mistakes. You are doing something incredibly difficult, and you are doing it beautifully. I believe in you, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.